So welcome. Filippo, you're pretty close to me. Can you hear me and see me? Welcome. Today is November 6, 2020. We are 3 through the semester. Wow, pretty exciting. Anyways, today, QM222 quantitative methods here during our COVID Learn from Anywhere. And a lot of people are still logging in, so I won't say anything important for the next 30 or 40 seconds. But what I'd like to do today is basically finish up what we started last week. And what was the idea of last week's lecture? Last week's lecture was to give you enough information to finish problem set 4. Problem set 4 had questions like put in a time trend, make a prediction, come up with R squared, those kind of questions. And we're going to basically do all that today. What we did last Friday was we went to the Mergent database and we pulled down data for the gap. And what I'd like to do today is I'd like to redo that whole thing, except instead of the gap, we're going to do Starbucks. Because Starbucks is even more interesting than the gap, what's happened. I don't know how many of you used to go to Starbucks before COVID. A little blue hand for those of you online. Used to go to Starbucks before COVID. So Alana went, Filippo, Kevin, Ayush. So I'm seeing 7 people. Okay, of the 7 people, 9, wait, keep your hands up. All right, how many of you now, of those who used to go to Starbucks, how many of you don't go to Starbucks or rarely go to Starbucks anymore? Yeah, so like basically half of you suddenly don't go to Starbucks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pull up the Starbucks data because Starbucks data has a nice time trend. It's going up, up, up. And then 2 quarters ago when COVID happened, Starbucks sales are destroyed. So the question is, how do you model that? How do you make a prediction when things are like from 1991 for 30 years, nice steady upward growth in sales, and then fall off a cliff? And hopefully in 50 minutes, we can all do it together. Does that make sense? In case you get lost, if you go to resources under our data files, the very top one is Starbucks. So this does everything except for the regressions. So everything, if you're like, oh, where'd it go? Oh my God, just click on this file, bring it up, and this takes care of roughly the first 15 to 20 minutes of the lecture, okay? So in case you get lost, there's a way to rejoin us and just run the regressions on your own. Okay, what are we doing? Because I'm feeling a little pressured for time, I don't want to keep switching back and forth to the slides. But we are doing slideshow number 16, forecasting and goodness of fit. So I really encourage you tonight, tomorrow, Sunday to look at the slides and go, oh yeah, he did that slide. Yeah, he did that slide, he did that slide, okay? And so I'm basically, to go back and forth, I can't do it in 45 minutes. Any questions before I begin? Great. Rithvik, are you there? We seem to have lost our teaching assistant. Okay, step 1, go to Google, Bing, any search engine you like. Don't care what it is. And I like to pat Serenity on the back. Serenity, I don't know if you're there, but if you are there, thank you.
Of course, I'm here.
Okay, great job. Serenity said, oh, there's an easier way to get the Mergent. Go to Google and type BU Mergent online. All right, so instead of going to BU libraries and looking for the database, blah, 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 let's follow the Serenity method. Thank you, Serenity. Hats off. Okay. If Rithvik's there, give her points. I don't know, it doesn't seem to be there. Click on the top one. And in blue is Mergent online. So that's pretty easy. So I just Googled Mergent, BU Mergent online. And there's a little blue thing that says company search using Mergent online and asks you to log in. Please log in as yourself. I don't think, hopefully you can log in as me. If you do, please let me know. I'll change my password. That's a joke. Actually, it's not. No one, you can't tell if anyone's smiling on these things or not, right? Okay, and up comes Mergent. Mergent is, we looked at the SEC database. SEC is the Security and Exchange Commission. The Security and Exchange Commission takes a lot of data from all public companies and puts it up in its database called EDGAR. The downside of places like EDGAR is it doesn't consolidated. It doesn't make it easy. It doesn't put it in an Excel file. You have to read through all these HTML pages and then pick the number you want, things like that. Edgar is fast, but it's really tough to process. And that's why there are repackagers like Mergent who repackage the SEC Edgar data. So what we'd like to do is pick company search. Is anyone having problems getting into Mergent? Okay, and the name of a company is Starbucks. Up comes two companies, Starbucks and Starbucks Japan, which is inactive. I don't know why Starbucks Japan is inactive, but we want Starbucks. So just click on the word Starbucks. Next to Starbucks is NMS. NMS means NASDAQ market system, which basically means not the New York Stock Exchange, but the other, the NASDAQ system, which stands for North American Securities Quotation Dealers or something like that. Okay. And we have a whole bunch of information about Starbucks, everything you need to do to analyze the company, who its executives are, key financial information, stock price, blah, 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 all beautiful stuff, but we really care about sales. So we care about the tab that says company financials. We care about the company financials tab. We're going to click on that. Anyone need me to go back? Basically what we did is Google, BU Mergent Online. We went to Mergent. And once we went to Mergent, all right, Rithvik. Rithvik's here. Please give Serenity full credit for today. Okay, Serenity, you can fall asleep. I'm joking. Stay awake, Serenity. All right. I need you to be awake. All right. We have a whole bunch of problems. If we just click, not a whole bunch, but we have one problem. If we pick quarters and pick refresh, what we'll notice is we see 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. But because all of you are geniuses and got into BU, you notice that quarter should be 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're missing that 4. How do we get the 4? We pick standardized. Pick standardized. So we pick standardized. And what I'm going to pick is not 5 quarters, but all available years. And I want the income statement. Because we're caring about not assets and liabilities, but instead we care about what? We care about sales. So I picked standardized, quarters, income statement, all available years. Let me say it again because about 3 of you missed one of those picks. Standardized, income statement, all available years, and then I'm going to pick refresh. And when you do that, if you did it properly, you should see 4, 3, 2, 1. I see 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4. Okay, so fourth quarter hasn't come out yet, which makes sense because where are we right now? We're in the middle of the fourth quarter. Are we? Yeah, we're in November. That's yeah, we're in the middle of the fourth quarter. So fourth quarter hasn't come out yet. And if we slide our cursor over, we should see data back to the 1990s. Whoop, 1991. Is anyone having any problem getting to Mergent Online? All right, pick download, and it should give us an Excel file in about a minute. It's going to be slow because right now, I think 37 of us are all clicking download at the same time. And I got standardized right here, XLS, it's opening. Let me stop sharing. Privacy option, who cares? Stop sharing. Serenity, you're up on the screen. Can you see Starbucks and an Excel spreadsheet?
I can, yes.
Great. So I'm going to pick enable editing because I trust this file. And I'm going to call this something like the original data, original. And now we'd like to open up a new spreadsheet, sheet 1. And why do I want to open up a new spreadsheet? Because we have some problems. First problem is sales revenue, and the revenue we're going to look at is the sales, other revenue, and total. We care about the total revenue line. We care about total revenue line. That's what we're going to try and look at. Sales revenue is primarily coffee, but other revenue, well, Starbucks does other things besides just sell coffee. All right. So we're going to look at total revenue. A couple of problems. We got blank columns. And the total revenue goes horizontally instead of vertically. So what am I going to do? Did you open up a new sheet? You open up a new sheet by picking a little plus sign. I'm going to take report date down to total revenue. And then I'm going to slide my cursor all the way to the right and highlight the whole area back to 1991. So I've highlighted all the way to HZ19, from A11 to HZ19. It's all highlighted. Now I'm going to pick copy. And I should get a little blinking box around A11 through HZ19. HZ19. You have a little blinking box? If you do, let's jump to sheet 1. And what we want to do is paste and do a pull down, special transpose. We want to do paste, special transpose. And hopefully everything comes up in vertical instead of horizontal format. We do not need US dollars. Just remember, all the things are in US dollars. We don't need audited status. We don't need whether it's consolidated. And the scale is thousands. It just means total revenues in thousands. We care about total revenue, so we don't need column G and H. So I'm going to delete columns C through H. I'm going to get rid of C through H just to clean things up. Delete sheet columns. I'm going to put the word quarter, or as we say in Boston, quota, here on the top. And I'm going to highlight everything from A1 down to A234. I've highlighted everything from A1 to C234. You'll notice I'm saying everything twice, not to bore you, but because some people, it takes a while for them to catch up, or what do you say, blah, blah, blah. Or you have a bad internet connection and you're missing some words. Now I want to sort all these data. Why do I want to sort all these data? So I get rid of all the blank lines. And so I get the 1991 at the top. I want to get 1991 at the top and 2020 at the bottom. I'm going to pick data, sort. And I'm going to sort, I'm making sure my data have headers, make sure this is checked off at the top over here. Make sure the top. And I'm going to pick report date, and I want A to Z. A to Z, which puts 1991 at the top because 1991 is before 2020. I'm going to pick OK. This is the most important step. This is where people mess up. I'm going to click on sort anything. I'm going to pick the top one. Pick the top one. If you don't pick the top one, things are going to be strange. Let me show you. I'm not going to pick the top one, okay? Do not do this. Do not do this. Did I say do not do this? Great. Do not do this. I'm going to pick the bottom one. When we pick sort, what do we see? We see 95, 206, 212, 217, 1994, 2000. That is not an order we want to play with, okay? So I'm going to pick undo. Undo again. Okay, we're back to the original data. I'm going to pick sort, report date, top one. And now when I make this column a little wider, 91, 92, 93, things look good. Yeah. My last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. File, save as. We'll save it to the desktop. You can save it wherever you want. I don't really care. But just in case things get messed up. Come up. There it is. Save it to the desktop and we'll call it Starbucks. Because there's no R in a word when you're from Boston. Except at the end. It's a joke. Okay? I'm going to be quiet now. And your job is to graph and create a professional looking graph. So just pretend this is the final exam. And it says, please create a professional looking graph and upload it. What are you graphing? Revenue over time. What are you graphing? Revenue over time. I'll be quiet for another minute. Give you a chance to do that. Oh, yes. And it would say, make sure you fill in the X and Y axis properly on the final exam. One more minute. All right, let's create a graph. So first, we put our cursor in C1 and just highlight all the data.
Jason, just a quick question. So a few people are messaging me asking me how to sort again for the years. They aren't seeing the checkbox for this one.
Not seeing the checkbox.
Yeah.
So I highlighted all the data. And then I picked data, sort. And there's no box in the top right corner. It says data has headers. Please unmute yourself if you're still having the problems, or I'll pick stop share.
Oh, Professor, it's me. I was having that problem that the checkbox doesn't show up.
Does it still not show up?
Yeah. Like when I click confirm, like it just sort my data by the second way, like the bottom checkbox way. Like it doesn't went through each year.
I'll go through each year. I tell you what, Stephen, maybe in 45 minutes you and I can chat.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
All right. I've got to go for COVID testing again, so I'll be in my office at about 11:30 Zoom. It depends how long the COVID line is.
Yep, got it. That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. But Stephen or anybody else, you can go online, pick data, and you can download the data file from resources, which is already sorted. All right, and that's why that file is there. So if you have any sorting or anything, the data file is sorted and it's up online. And you can now follow along using that file instead of this file. So the file online should look exactly like my screen does right now. Terrific. Can they see the screen? Great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a graph. Pretty straightforward. We're going to pick insert. We want a line graph this time. And you get a choice between whether it's a line without dots or a line with dots. I kind of like the one without dots, but not going to make any difference on your final exam, your score, because this is the art part, and the art part is up to you. So we'll pick line. I'm going to change total revenue to Starbucks revenue, Starbucks, because that's what the company is. We have 1 through 116 down here on the bottom. I'm going to click once. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to add dates instead of 1 through 116. So I'm going to pick select data. And when I pick select data, there's horizontal axis labels. And our axis labels are the dates, which are A2 through A118. I picked select data, Horizontal axis labels, I'll pick OK. And we now have dates. All right, they're ugly dates, but they're dates. It's not 1 through 116. We can spend some more time changing the dates, but I don't want to waste time getting it, dropping the day part. It's not really that important. And what do we see? We can do one last thing. Please remember these numbers are in thousands, so I really want to add 3 zeros. How do I add and make this really look professional? Click once on the vertical column, format axis, and then I can say display units are in millions. But wait, that's a lie. The numbers aren't in millions. Instead, they're in billions, right? Because there's 3 extra zeros that are missing. How do I fix that? How do I tell Excel? The simplest way, click on the word millions, move your cursor to the M, move your cursor to the M, and type B instead, billions. Voila. I'm sorry if you were expecting something super fancy, all right? But we now have it in billions. A nice, simple, easy to read column here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Woo! Now, somebody besides Serenity or Stephen, who both have full credit today, but somebody else online, can you tell me what this graph says? In simple words, just like a sentence or two. Kevin, go for it.
Revenue is going pretty consistently up until the last 2 quarters where it took a dip, probably because of COVID.
Okay, and how much did it take a dip? Kenzie, you had your hand up too. Kenzie, roughly how big is the dip? Ashley, go for it.
3 billion.
Yeah, $3 billion hit. Going along nicely, a $3 billion hit. Woo! So what I'd like to do, we now have half hour. I'd like to run a number of regressions. What's the goal? What's the big picture? We want to be able to forecast, what is this number here? What is fourth quarter 2020? So our big question today is, can we forecast fourth quarter 2020? Now, of course, the answer is yes. I guess maybe the better question is, what is our forecast for fourth quarter 2020? Is that better than can we? Hopefully we can, yeah. If we can't, like, what are we doing here? What am I trying to teach you? So let's follow along with problem set 4. Problem set 4 says, first, create a time dummy. Did any of you look at problem set 4 yet? Due Sunday night, 6 o'clock. Hopefully that's not shocking news, right? So problem set 4, there's 2 parts to problem set 4. The second part of problem set 4 says create a time dummy. How do you create a time dummy or a time sequence? 1, 2. So we've created 1, 2, and then we autofill, highlight 1, 2, go to the bottom right corner and double click. So the first quarter is 1991. Third quarter, second quarter, the second time is fourth quarter 1991, and so on. All the way down to, we have a 117th quarter, and what do we want to forecast? We want to forecast the 118th quarter. So I'm going to be quiet. Step 1 of regression. Regression 1. Do a OLS, ordinary least squares, which is what Excel does automatically. Regression, where sales, that's not sales. Sales is the Y value, and time is X value. But we want to do it for everything. Do it for everything till COVID. Don't include the 2 quarters. Do not include the 2 quarters Well, we have the 3 billion drop in sales. So what am I asking you to do? Come up with a simple regression that shows from here to here using time. The second regression, we're going to include everything. We're going to see the difference in the regression for everything versus everything except for the COVID bit. Does that make sense? So step one, do the first 116 quarters, is it? 115 quarters. So do up to row A116. And then after we talk about that for a moment, we're going to do it all. We're going to go to A119, A118, sorry. Are they being confused? Yep.
How do you put the data path in if you lost it?
So if you lost it, files, options, are you on a PC or Mac?
On PC.
You're on a PC. File options, and then under options is add-ins, and then down the very bottom of add-ins, on the very bottom of add-ins, manage. Click go. Click analysis toolpack. Okay, and the analysis toolpack hopefully shows up now under data. If it didn't, and it was already selected, unselected, pick OK, and then reselect it. And that tells it to turn off, turn on. If you're fast at this regression, what do the coefficients tell us? If you're fast, what do the coefficients tell us? Give everyone a few more seconds, and then I'll start going click, click, click. All right, so we want to pick data, data analysis, regression. Okay. The Y range is going to be total revenue, and it's going to be C1 down to C116. So I'm not including the COVID. I'm missing the last two data points. The X range is going to be the time dummy, the time counter, which is also 116. If you don't have both being 1:116, there's going to be an error from Excel. They're not matched up. We're going to have labels. I'm going to pick OK. If I pick constant is 0, what does that say? The data start in 1991. The data start in 1991. They start third quarter. If I pick constant is 0, don't do it. But what it says is Starbucks sales in second quarter of 1991 were nothing. I believe Starbucks had sales in 1991. I believe Starbucks started like in the 80s. I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I think for 10 years they were a tiny little place that just sold coffee machines until they became what we know as the Starbucks. We'll pick OK. And I got an intercept and a time value of this. Did you match what I got? Let's clean things up because it's important when making presentations to clean things up. We don't need a repeated upper and lower 95%, so we can delete those columns. Multiple R makes no sense in business. I've never seen anyone use multiple R in a business situation. R square and adjusted R square. Always format these as a percent. What does R square and adjusted R square say? It says time explains 92% of sales. We are missing data on the other 8% of sales. If you look at the notes, what the notes say is the problem with R square, the notes, the PowerPoint, say the problem with R square is as you add more variables, more explanatory variables, R square always goes up. So if somebody is trying to judge how good a fit I have, I can throw in all kind of junk as X. Things like for Starbucks, I don't know, the price of soybeans. I can add anything, and I can always boost my R squared. Adjusted R squared takes account of junk variables. Adjusted R squared takes account of it. So what adjusted R squared is adjusted R squared is R squared adjusted for how many variables you put into the regression. So if you put in lots of junk variables that have no impact except to boost R squared, adjusted R squared actually goes down. If there's a big difference between R squared and adjusted R squared, for example, R squared is 92%, and I'm just going to pretend adjusted R squared is 87%, you're like, oh, there's junk variables in the equation. If they're pretty close, they're 92 and 92 or 92 and 91, there's no junk variables. Does that make sense? Questions?
Professor, did you say junk variables?
Junk variables.
Like what does that mean?
Junk variables means variables that have no explanatory power
Thank you.
added to the equation. You don't have to call them junk. Junk is not the technical term, okay? It's a local Boston term. I'm sure you could find somebody who has far more sophisticated language than I do. The standard error, this number right here says standard error. That's the standard error of the equation, and we're going to use that in a moment to make our prediction. So hold on your hats if you're wearing a hat, and we'll come back. And you should have 115 observations. The ANOVA, we can format the significance. We get 0. That means all the X variables are pretty darn good at explaining. But we only have 1, so ANOVA section is kind of useless right now. We can get rid of the whole ANOVA section. So we have standard error. That's pretty good. I like the standard error. We can format that as money because it follows along the exact same as the coefficients. We have the t-stat. Those are good. And I would say in this class, we're not dealing with p-values. You could, but let's just get rid of it. And the upper and lower 95% is money. So now we have a nice, simple, clean regression that we can pop into a report because we got rid of all the extraneous stuff. Does that make sense? Clean it up. Okay, what do these coefficients mean? The key one is time. Anybody online want to help me out on explaining what time means? Ayush.
So as time increases by 1, Starbucks earns 15.
No. You're technically perfect, Ayush. Please pat yourself only with 2 fingers on your shoulder. Because being technically perfect and being understandable in the boardroom by people is totally different. What does increasing by 1 mean in simple words? So your mother.
Just like as the year over year, I guess.
No.
Like.
Nicole, help them out. And then we'll come back to Ayush.
It's per quarter.
Yeah, every time the quarter, every quarterly increase. So we go up by another quarter. All right, keep going, Ayush. Now that you
So I guess for every quarter,
every quarter,
Starbucks revenue increases by 59 million because it's in thousands.
All right, Ayush, round.
60 million.
Every quarter Starbucks revenue goes up about 60 million. Smackaroonies, dollars, whatever you want, okay? Excellent. You think everybody would get that, Ayush? Every quarter Starbucks revenue goes up about 60 million?
I guess so.
Good, perfect. Ritvik, please give Ayush 100% today and give him a Ayush 100% last class because I just bothered him, all right? All right, intercept. When is the intercept? What is the intercept? It's when all the x variables are 0. When the x variable time is 0, what are we talking about? Go ahead, you were right.
1990.
Second quarter 1992, right. So back in 1992, our prediction for second quarter QTR of 1992 is that Starbucks would have negative revenue. What does negative revenue for a store mean? It means people are returning things. 90-second dad joke. It was a tailor, Lower East Side of New York City, decided to open up his own tailor shop. His friend comes by the first day and says, how's it going? He goes, not so well. What do you mean not so well? I sold one suit today. Friend says, maybe tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow, friend comes by and says, how's business? Worse. What do you mean worse? Yesterday you only sold one suit. He goes, today I didn't sell anything. Friend says, maybe tomorrow will be better. Third day, the friend comes by and says, how's business? Guy goes, even worse. Even worse, you didn't sell anything yesterday. He goes, yeah, the man from the day before returned the suit. -1. So negative revenue means returns are greater than sales. A little bizarre. And thank you for laughing at the dad joke. Guncha.
Yeah, I just had a question. So why are we talking about the second quarter of 1992 specifically?
Because when we jump to the data sheet, time is 1 right there. So if I added a blank line before it, it would be 0. Oh, I'm sorry, 1991, not 1992. Yell at me. Okay, so 0 would be second quarter 1991. It's the row before this.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So why, since we're on this sheet, why are we having such a bad prediction? Because this is actually not a linear increase, it's sort of a log increase. It's kind of a curvature here, and we're not picking up that little bit of curvature. If we did, the intercept would be much better. Well, why aren't you teaching us logs? Yes, I will in 3 weeks, okay? Sorry, we gotta get through some of the other stuff first. Okay, so let's make our prediction. We wanna predict fourth quarter 2020. What is time in fourth quarter 2020? Let's jump back to the sheet. We'd like to predict here 118. When time equals 118, what is our best prediction for this? I'll be quiet for a second and give you a head start. All right, one easy way to do it is to do an insert. We'll type values, always a 1 for the intercept, so it gets counted, and time is 118. And our best prediction is the sum product of A10 colon A11 11 comma the coefficients C10 C colon C11 Our best prediction will be Starbucks will sell $6 billion worth of coffee. $6 billion worth of coffee. The function I used was some product A10 colon A11, C10 colon C11. This is small enough that you can actually just type it out. You can just type equals minus 1.2 billion plus 60 or 59,585 times 118. Always give a range, never give a single number. So what's the upper and lower prediction? The upper and lower prediction is we use the standard error of the regression. I just made that standard error in yellow. To create the 95% range, we take our prediction and we add and subtract 2 standard errors of the regression. We do not, NOT, do not use the standard errors of the coefficients. We use the standard error of the regression, the overall. So upper and lower equals our best guess, C13, plus 2 times the standard error of the regression, C6. And our worst, our lower, is equal to our best guess, C13, minus 2 times C6. Get rid of the pennies. We do not need pennies when talking about billions of dollars. And our best guess is that we're going to sell between $4.6 billion worth of coffee and $7 billion. Pretty wide guess, but all we did was add time. We have nothing else about Starbucks besides time. Make sense? All right. We're going to real quickly do another regression, and this regression is all the variables. What happens when we add in? What happens when we add in the COVID drop? Same regression, same everything. Data analysis regression. And we want to go to C18. And we want to go to D18. Add the 2 more. Click OK. Cut. Jump to C2. And we're going to paste it right here so we can do a little comparison. Clean things up. We don't need multiple R square. We don't need the upper and lower 95% repeated. The ANOVA is not useful in this particular regression. R squared and adjusted R squared become percentages. You can format all this as money without pennies. And this T-stats become so we now have 117 observations. And interestingly, the R squared only drops by about 1%. And time is also about the same. So not much really happened by just adding 2 more data points. Not much happened in this regression by adding 2 more data points. All right. If you followed along or you've actually looked at it, problem set 4 says add time squared. Time squared to your regression. So what's time squared? We're just going to type equal D2 times D2. Time squared is D2 times D2. Make sense? And I'm just going to copy that down. So for example, period 6 is equal to 36. Period 7 equals 49. Sorry, period 7 equals 49. And we're going to run the regressions again. The only difference is we're going to have 2 explanatory variables, D and E. D and E. So we're going to pick data analysis, okay. And this time we're going to pick, instead of D, we're going to go to E. All right, I'm going to have to redo it. D to E. It didn't come out well. Let's erase the whole thing. Delete. Okay. Try it again. All right, so the C range is the same, and our X range is D1 through E118. We'll pick OK. And what happened? Our R square jumped to 98%. By adding time and time square, we're up to 98%. The problem is, while our coefficients look real nice, what happened to our t-stats? Our t-stat is that time is meaningless. Only time squared is important. Time is meaningless. Only time squared is important. So what I'm going to do is I want to rerun this regression one more time. And not only that, the time coefficient is really totally different than it was before. Things look really strange here. I want to rerun this regression except skip the COVID part. Okay? So do time and time squared without the COVID part. Go back to sheet 1. Data analysis regression. I'm going to just go to C16, 116, 16, and up to E116. Click OK. Wow. Our R squared now is 99%. We're explaining almost everything. The t-stats on time is pretty good. And the coefficients are actually looking a little bit better. So I was hoping we could do a prediction right now, but I only have 3 minutes left. So now what I want to do is show you, how do we handle COVID? How do we handle COVID? We go back to the sheet and we create something called a COVID dummy. What's the COVID dummy? Let's put a 0 everywhere. Put a 0 everywhere by just autofilling 0. And then I'm going to jump down to the bottom. And I want to put a 1 in the 2 quarters that have COVID. What I've just done is I said, let's create a dummy variable that signifies when we have COVID and when we don't have COVID. And I want to run a regression now of time times square and COVID. Please note, problem set 4 does not ask you to do a dummy variable for COVID, but this is what you would do in real life. We'll rerun the regression again. Data analysis regression. And this time, instead of D1, it's through F1 down to F118. We'll pick OK. What's going on? So it's the C column, everything, including COVID. Pick OK. We get another 99% regression with an R square. The t-stat on everything is highly significant. Everything's greater than 2 except for the intercept, which we really don't care that much about. And the coefficients, if I had time to explain them, but I don't, all make nice sense. But the most important thing is, what does this COVID number right here tell us? Every time period we're having COVID, we drop our sales by about $2 billion. So with this regression, we can make a nice prediction and we can figure out what COVID is. Let me do the prediction, and feel free if you have another class to leave. I'm going to go 1 minute over. I'm going to pick values. Always 1 for the intercept. COVID is going to be true. And we like to predict one time unit 118. So how do we do that? We type 118 here. We type equal 118 times 118, but times squared because we're just squaring the items. And COVID is true. We're still having COVID, right? What is our prediction? Prediction. Our prediction is equal to sum product of A17 through A20 using the coefficient C17 colon C20. And we are predicting this next quarter for Starbucks, $5.3 billion in sales. If we had an extra minute, I'd use the upper and lower. And how would I do the upper and lower? By including plus or minus 2 standard errors. All right, I'll have to let everybody, all of you go because we are over time. I'm happy to stay online for a couple of minutes and answer any questions. Thank you very much. Have a very healthy and safe weekend. I look forward to seeing all of you on Monday. Ashley.
A quick question. I thought you're supposed to take away one variable when you do multivariable regression. How come you did all of them there?
When we do multiple dummy regressions, okay, like we have winter, spring, summer, fall, grade dummies, we always take away one. But when we do multiple regressions by itself, we didn't take away any. We don't take away anything.
Oh, okay. And then I had another. Oh, sorry. Could I ask one more question?
That's 2 more, 3 more.
Okay. One more question. If you were to do the lower and upper 95%, but like for a variable, like let's say time, you still like, would you still not use the standard error from the regression statistics? Because you use the standard error just for the prediction to get the 95 percentile. But if you're doing like for example, for time, would you be using the standard error that's given for time?
So if I'm asked, is this particular number, I'm going to if this particular value, what's the range for that? I take this in blue and I add and subtract 2 of them. And I get these numbers also in blue. So Excel has already
from the coefficient. Okay.
So Excel has already told you the range that coefficient falls into. But for this prediction right here, which I'm going to make in red.
Yeah.
That is a single number, and the single number that is associated with that, this is the error associated with the best prediction.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Somebody else had their hand up?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. I know we're going a little bit over time, but I was just curious, like, what does time squared really mean? Like, could you like?
Let me tell you that this is the most problematic 5 minutes of the entire semester for me. Time squared. I have lectured to MBA saying never use time squared.
Oh.
Time doesn't go twice as fast. It doesn't go 10 times as fast.
Yeah.
There's a sort of, you know, when other professors say, let's use time squared, I was like, all right, fine, we'll use time squared. But philosophically, I'm like, no, you never use time squared. But it fits so well.
So then follow up to that question, how do you interpret it? Because I know we know how to interpret time, but like, how would you interpret time squared? Is there no way of doing it?
This is like, this is why I tell MBAs, if you can't interpret it, you don't put it in.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you, Professor.
Professor, following up on that actually, like, but effectively what you're doing when you're squaring time is you're just saying that sort of the last quarter is way more significant than the quarters before, right? That's all you're saying.
Hang on, sorry, Philippe, I'd love to answer you, but Ritvik's talking in my ear about what time squared might mean.
Yeah. So I'm saying like the time and happiness, or the money and happiness, like if you were comparing the two, it's the same thing where it's like at a certain point, your value cannot increase that impressively with time. So that's why you want to flatten the curve. That's the only way I would.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Philippe. Sorry about that.
I was just asking, like, I was just saying, isn't effectively all you're doing when you're doing time squared assigning sort of more weight to like the previous quarter compared to quarters that came earlier? Like you're just saying it's more significant.
And this is why we have sort of a little fight in the department over, you know, should we include time squared or not? That is part of the argument for including time squared. It fits well, it gives more weight to current time and less weight to old time. So let me just say that I'm not so adamant, like, wow, I'll never teach this. I mean, I did go through it, it's in the problem set. So, but I'm just like, you get into such trouble when you have time squared on that. And because
Mhm.
what happens is in the board meeting, you start getting into philosophical discussions about, can time really speed up? And I don't know, in business, philosophical discussions are great, but they're for like, after work, sitting around with having coffee or drinks. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for thinking about this.
Yeah, just shoot me an email. And then
Thank you, Professor. Enjoy your weekend.